Okay, welcome to this month's hangout. I mean, it's almost next month, I guess. But we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A app, and we have one question in the uh, I think the event page. So what we'll do is we'll just take, if you have any live questions, please ask them, and we'll alternate between your questions and the Q&A app question. Hey, Nash, can you hear us? Okay.
हाँ जी सर, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन
Sorry?
मैं एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ आपसे।
जरूर पूछिएगा।
Okay, okay. Okay, we start with
तो सर मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि अगर दो वेबसाइट है, समझ लो एक ओल्ड है एक नई है, तो
हाँ
दोनों एक ही सब्जेक्ट पर कंटेंट लिखती है, जैसे कि लाइक जॉब की वेबसाइट होती है। तो जब भी नई जॉब कोई भी जॉब आती है, तो उसमें कंटेंट तो एक जैसा ही होता है, भी लिखना तो एक जैसा ही पड़ता है दोनों को।
हाँ।
तो अगर वो उसमें क्या डुप्लीकेट कंटेंट होगा क्या? जैसे कि पुरानी वाली वेबसाइट अपना कंटेंट पहले डाल देती है और नई वाली थोड़ी देर बाद डालती है, तो क्या वो डुप्लीकेट कंटेंट में आएगा?
तो अगर मैंने आपका सवाल सही समझा है तो आप ये कहना चाहते हैं कि आप
there seems to be a lot of noise.
या आपको हमारी आवाज सुनाई दे रही है ना?
हाँ जी सर।
हाँ ठीक है। तो मैं जहाँ तक आपका सवाल समझता हूँ, आप ये पूछना चाहते हैं कि आपके पास एक पुरानी वाली साइट है और एक नई वाली, और दोनों में आप सिमिलर तरह का कंटेंट लिखते हो।
नहीं, एक दूसरे बंदे की है और एक मेरी वेबसाइट है।
मैं क्षमा चाहता हूँ, आपकी आवाज थोड़ी सी ब्रेक हो रही है। आप दोबारा बोलेंगे?
एक किसी और बंदे की है और एक मेरी वेबसाइट है।
अच्छा, तो एक किसी और बंदे की है, एक आपकी है।
जी सर।
हाँ, लेकिन दोनों एक ही टॉपिक के वेबसाइट्स हैं।
हाँ सर।
हाँ, तो अब उस पर कंटेंट होगा, मतलब एक ही टॉपिक के अगर हैं तो चांसेस ये हैं कि बहुत सारा कंटेंट मिलता जुलता होगा, सही?
जी
हाँ, तो आप ये पूछना चाहते हैं कि क्या वो डुप्लीकेट कंटेंट में की तरह समझा जाएगा? तो
हाँ सर।
हाँ, तो ऐसे बहुत सारे सिनेरियोज हैं जहाँ पर सेम टॉपिक पर बहुत सारे वेबसाइट्स, बहुत सारे वेब पेजेस होते हैं। आपको ये करना चाहिए कि आपको जितना हो सके यूनिक कंटेंट बनाना चाहिए आपकी वेबसाइट के लिए। और अगर आप अपनी वेबसाइट के लिए यूनिक कंटेंट बनाते हो और दूसरे लोग भी उसी तरह से अगर अपना अपना कंटेंट बनाते हैं, तो गूगल बहुत ही अच्छी तरीके से ये समझ सकता है कि ये अलग अलग कंटेंट है। अगर कोई किसी का कंटेंट कॉपी करता है, तब जाके वो डुप्लीकेट कंटेंट का इश्यू हो सकता है। वरना अगर आप यूनिक कंटेंट लिखते हैं तो फिर आपको इसके बारे में ज्यादा सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है।
सर इसमें अगर जॉब की वेबसाइट हो तो वो तो सिमिलर कंटेंट रहता है, उसका मैं पूछ रहा था।
इसमें अगर आपकी आवाज ठीक तरह से हम
जॉब की वेबसाइट, जैसे कोई जॉब आती है गवर्नमेंट जॉब, उसका कंटेंट लगभग सेम ही रहता है।
गवर्नमेंट जॉब उसका डिटेल लगभग सेम ही रहता है। हाँ, तो ऐसा हो सकता है कि कुछ इस तरह का कंटेंट होता है कि जो आप चेंज नहीं कर सकते, जैसे कि जॉब डिस्क्रिप्शन है या फिर कोई प्रोडक्ट का स्पेसिफिकेशन हो। ठीक है, इस तरह की कुछ चीजें होती हैं जो सेम ही होता है। ठीक है, तो
जी सर।
हाँ, तो आपको ये करना चाहिए कि आपकी वेबसाइट पर आप ये सोचिएगा कि कोई भी यूजर दूसरों की वेबसाइट के बजाय आपकी वेबसाइट पर आना क्यों पसंद करेगा। तो आपको कुछ ऐसी यूनिक वैल्यू उसको देनी चाहिए जिससे कि वो आपकी वेबसाइट पर आना पसंद करे, जिससे कि उसको दूसरों की वेबसाइट पे जाने से ज्यादा आपकी वेबसाइट पर आने पर ज्यादा फायदा हो। इस तरह से अगर आप अपने यूजर के बारे में सोचते हो और उस तरह से अपनी वेबसाइट को आप डिजाइन करते हो और उस तरह का सामग्री उस पर प्रोवाइड करते हो, तो वो आपके लिए बेहतर होगा। वरना अगर आप सिर्फ जो ये जो जॉब का डिस्क्रिप्शन है सिर्फ वही कॉपी कर कर सिर्फ वही डाल देते हो, तो और उसके उसके बदले में आपके जो दूसरे कॉम्पिटिटर्स हैं अगर वो कुछ ज्यादा यूनिक वैल्यू ऐड अपने यूजर्स को प्रोवाइड करते हैं उस कंटेंट के अलावा कुछ और एडिशनल फंक्शनैलिटी या फीचर्स वो लोग प्रोवाइड करते हैं, तो फिर हो सकता है कि गूगल वो वेबसाइट को अच्छी तरह से रैंक करे।
और अगर सर वो दूसरी वेबसाइट वाला अगर हमें जैसे कि सर्च कंसोल में अगर याद करता है कि हमारी ये वेबसाइट न्यू वाली वेबसाइट मेरा कंटेंट कॉपी कर रही है, तो क्या गूगल उसके लिए पेनल्टी देगा नई वाली वेबसाइट?
तो वो तो देखा जाएगा कि मतलब किस तरह की वेबसाइट है, किस तरह का कंटेंट है, उसके बाद उस पर डिसीजन लिया जाएगा। ये मतलब कि केस बाय केस बेसिस पर इसको देखा जाएगा। ठीक है। और तो आपको ये भी करना चाहिए। हाँ, तो आप एक बार आशीष जी ये कहना चाहते हैं कि आप एक बार हमारे जो वेबमास्टर गाइडलाइंस हैं वो भी एक अच्छी तरह से पढ़ लें और उसमें भी आप समझ जाएं कि मतलब किस तरह के वॉयलेशंस हैं जिसकी वजह से आपको मतलब आपकी वेबसाइट पर मैनुअल एक्शन आ सकता है। और आप वो अगर अवॉइड करेंगे और अपने यूजर्स को कुछ यूनिक वैल्यू ऐड अगर प्रोवाइड करते रहेंगे तो फिर आपको परेशान होने की कोई जरूरत नहीं।
Just take the next question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll take Ramesh's question and then we'll switch for another live question. So first, this question is, how is Google's cache of any page different than Fetch's Google tool? I mean, this is pretty straightforward. So Google's cache is most probably the last indexed version of your page. On the other hand, I check how Google is fetching your site now, how Googlebot is looking at your site now. There are a few restrictions though. Google, you can't, like Fetch Google doesn't follow redirects. On the other hand, while the normal Googlebot does. So Fetch Google just tells you that we are seeing a redirect, but it doesn't follow the redirect and fetch the content from the redirected page. So that's one restriction. Mute Mayu for some noise. Sorry. I'll just take the next question. Could you describe if I target homepage for a keyword and then after 1 year I target my internal page for the same keyword except optimizing content and interlinking? What should I do? I mean, it's pretty common that a lot of people target multiple pages for the same keyword on their websites. It's just the nature of the content, right? So in many cases, you just end up having, like if your website is talking about car repairs or something, then like the same about one product can pop up in multiple articles. So that's totally fine. And many people try to like have multiple articles focusing on maybe one keyword. So I think you just need to strike a balance on how many articles you should have for one keyword where it can become overkill. And also depending on what else you should do so that you can rank it, ideally we'd like to show only like one page from a particular site because otherwise like, the user wouldn't see like different information. So from your side, like what you said is pretty much like most of the things many people do, like writing good content and like properly linking from other pages of your site that helps users navigate properly. So that's pretty much what. I mean, obviously you can also do other things like sharing the content, putting ads and stuff, but this is like there's not much the difference from what you do for your other company. Mayur, can you mute yourself? There's some noise. So if you have any live questions, please go ahead and ask us. If not, we'll just keep taking the questions from the Q&A app. How to understand that? How to evaluate that the crawler understands synonyms of a particular word so that we don't repeat it. If I type cheap hotels in search engine and Google shows the result of budget hotels, does it mean that Google finds budget and cheap as synonyms? Yeah, I mean, so we've been improving our search forever, right? So I think in 2012 when we launched knowledge graph and everything, we started identifying things as entities and stuff so that we pretty much almost never make a mistake between Apple the food and Apple the company. So we are pretty good at understanding synonyms so that if someone's searching for cheap hotels, we understand that they may be looking for budget hotels, so that's what we serve. From your perspective, what do you do that you don't repeat it? I don't think it's a problem if you repeat it. Just try and make it, if you keep using, if you think using budget hotels is more relevant for your users, just keep doing that. Or if you interchange and use more keywords like budget hotels and cheap hotels, if it makes sense, go ahead and do it. But also keep in mind that when a user reads your article, if there are a bunch of keywords like budget hotels and cheap hotels, and if it doesn't really fit into the article and it doesn't make sense for users, then the overall point of you writing the article is lost. So in that case, you may not even rank for these keywords because content by itself is not good. So what I'd suggest is use whatever words make sense. If you think you should target both keywords, as long as it's relevant, you can use both the keywords. And Google is good enough to understand across these words. So just make sure, while you're targeting these keywords, your content is not effective.
One other thing you can also do, Neeraj, is look at the search analytics page and the keywords there in Search Console, and see what are the most used keywords by your users, right? So sometimes it may happen that there are two versions of a word, and one is more popularly used, and the other one is not so much used. So maybe in some scenarios it may make sense for you to focus on what people are actually typing in. I mean, that's just one additional point there.
Okay. So another question from Neeraj. Again, guys, if you have any live questions, please unmute yourself and ask us. Otherwise, we'll keep going with the Q&A app questions. What is the best way to deal with some pages that are expired, but maybe in future we will make them live again? No index. So this question is from Neeraj. So I see Neeraj is here. I'd say it depends on the time between what do you mean when you say future. So if it is just say a month or just 2-3 weeks, sometimes many people do maintenance on their websites where they take down and they tell Google that they just serve a server error request. Sorry, they just serve a finite error to Google, and Google understands that it's just temporarily maintenance issues, and we'll come back and reindex the content once we can crawl it properly. On the other hand, if it's for a really long time, then it makes sense to no index them if you don't want those pages on the index. So it depends on how long you mean by when those pages come back in the future. Also, if it's product pages out of stock or something like that, I think it's fine to just keep those pages in the index, because we understand and read out we understand that when a product is out of stock, if you provide proper rich snippets and everything, it's pretty it's easier for Google to understand, and we may not serve that product when someone's searching.
Yeah, hi Ashish, Neeraj.
Hey.
Yeah, Ashish, actually, this was the problem when we have a page that has deals only twice in a year or once in a year. And what I know is that if you use no index for long time, then it may lose the value of the particular page, but I know that after 6 months I again need to rank this page. So in such case, if I use no index or 404, the value of that will expire, but will it be back when I again relaunch this page?
So I'd say you don't need to no index or anything. You can just tell, like, you can just give a title or something that says this deal is currently no longer live. Please check back in so and so time or something. Like, we understand. So that's how sometimes Google understands soft 404s, where the page is not returning a 404 HTTP header response, but like, based on the content we see, if we understand that the page doesn't contain any content, we understand that it's a 404 page anyway. On the other hand, if you actually provide details of the previous deals and you just tell that this deal is no longer live, I think it's fine to keep it in the index. There's no reason to, like, no index it.
So it means in such case, for soft 404 is okay.
No. I'm just talking about, like, if there is no content on that page, and if you say that this page doesn't have any content right now, please check back in so and so time, then Google will understand that as a soft 404. On the other hand, if you provide details of the past deals, that could actually be useful information for, like, users who look for that. When they come to that page, they understand that, okay, like, this deal could be up in so and so time in few months or something like that. So it's not a completely, like, useless page. So it's fine to keep it in the index. And when someone is searching for that deal, like, Google understands, and, like, if you see that, like, your page says, okay, this deal is not live, and if there's some other pages that have that kind of deal live right now, we'll probably pick that page and show them, like, first for that period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I will just go with like mentioning this is not currently, so you can just find out some other closest matching. But I believe that Webmaster Tools will give me for soft 404 in such case.
Yeah. Again, so like I said, it's not all it doesn't always give 404s. 404s are served only when there's no content at all, and you just provide something like, this page doesn't have any. You provide a message, sort of like, there's no content on this page or something like that. Then we can understand that there's no content on that page. On the other hand, if there is content on that page, while simultaneously you're saying that this deal is not live now, then it may not necessarily be 404, because the other content, the old content, is still relevant for some users. Does that make sense?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll take the next question by Ramesh. If our CDN is blocked for bots, can Google still crawl the content present on it? Our images hosted in CDN server and robots.txt is showing blocked all comments. So no, I mean, if your CDN is blocked for bots, then we can't obviously crawl images that are hosted on your CDN. I mean, what people normally do, as far as I understand, is while CDN blocks all Googlebot from crawling it, they'll still allow Googlebot images or so that it can just access the images that are hosted on your CDN, so that, like, we do not, like, we can properly render your images in cache, and, like, we can understand, especially for image search, we can actually provide your images in search results. Otherwise, your images may not show up in image search. Your content will still rank, obviously, but your images may not show up in image search.
Yeah, so wherever the source of your image is, Ramesh, it is important to make that crawlable, available to bot. Otherwise,
here, like, his images are on a CDN and it's blocked. So at least if you unblock it just for Googlebot images, that should be fine. Another question from Ramesh. So actually we have a question in chat, so we'll just take that. Does Google consider Roman Hindi language websites as English websites? I read these sites get good traffic due to this. So this is kind of tricky, because there is, I think we do serve Roman Hindi language websites for Roman Hindi queries. I think it's called transliteration.
Yeah, so basically we try to understand them as Hindi, because the words used there are not English words, although the script being used is English. And we see that a lot of times, not only content, but we also see queries coming in like that. People are typing in, Hindi queries in English letters. So no, we don't understand that as English, but rather we try to understand that as Hindi.
Okay. Again, so if you want to create sites using Roman Hindi, it's perfectly fine if you want to do so. Ideally, because like a lot of people while these days while searching, they use Roman Hindi to search, so it makes perfect sense. But I mean, if you also want to like cater to your actual like Hindi script audience, maybe you can just serve alternate pages for them. But I don't think, I'm not sure if there's any hreflang tag for Hindi English.
There isn't.
Yeah, there isn't. But I guess like you can always have like main Hindi as Hindi script as the main page and provide alternate English version in Roman Hindi. Another question in chat. So what is the best approach to create a separate mobile website or responsive instance? So it depends. Like ideally Google recommends responsive because we think it's easier. Like once you figure out like how you want the design and the layout of your page on mobile, it's like very straightforward, easy to maintain, easy for Googlebot and users because you just have one page. You don't have multiple instances of the page, right? So it's easier for us to crawl, and it's easy for like it saves your resources also, and like it's like one page across all devices. You don't have to worry about like whether it fits on a tablet or on even on like say big screen like a television or something like that. On the other hand, separate mobile website, like you have more freedom to like design the website exactly as how you want. On the other hand, even you can have your own separate content for that mobile website. You don't need to like have the same content as on your desktop website. So that's a big advantage that comes with separate mobile site. So you just need to think of what's your strategy. If you want to have like different content and like some like say deals only on mobile website, something like that, so then it makes sense to have separate mobile site. On the other hand, if you think the content stays the same, you just want to provide a good mobile website, responsive instance is the way to go. Take a question from Ram. Shilpa, there's noise coming out of your system, so we'll just mute you. If you do have question, unmute yourself. Okay, just take the question from Kamal. Please confirm if page rendering in Google Cache is important. My website does not render properly in Google Cache, but entire content is visible in the text-only version. It shows some content hidden with visibility hidden. So I'm not sure if you mean content hidden for your users or for are you saying you have display none or something like that, some divs like that in your site? I mean, if that's the case, then it's kind of against Google's policies. So ideally, we don't want you to have hidden content, hidden text for your users. You can always have it under a drop-down if you think it's like it's ugly or something like that. But you should definitely not make it hidden to users. Another thing, Google Cache is important, but I think it's better for you to check if your pages are rendering properly using the fetches render tool in Search Console. Because once you use fetches render, you can actually check what exactly are the resources that are being blocked from Googlebot accessing them, and if it's not rendering properly, we'll you can see that there right in the tool itself, and you can fix the issues. So I think like in this question one, like if you have hidden content for users, please do not have hidden content anymore. And two, like use fetches render to like debug any issues.
So another important point to note is also make sure that you're not blocking any resources like JavaScript and CSS files attached to these pages, because Google needs to crawl them to understand your page in its entirety. right? And about the hidden content, if the content is, for example, drop-down menus and things like that, then it's fine to have content hidden, which is available through clicks, for example, right, or from some interaction by the user. That's okay. But if you have content hidden for some other purposes like keywords and stuff that are not intended for user, then that is something you should not be doing.
I have another question from David. I write quality content, but I want to include links to other sites so users would benefit from information provided there. I don't want to send users from my site to other sites as I fear it might hurt my rankings. Is that the truth? Does it hurt rankings? So no, I mean, like, if you, like, on your own, if you provide links to some website that you think it's relevant, it doesn't really hurt your rankings. But if we detect that, on the other hand, if you're, like, selling links for other websites, then, like, it violates our policy. So it's like there's a pretty huge difference between both, right? So obviously, like, it's totally fine if your friend wants you to review your like one of his products, and you do it and you link back to his site. It's relevant and there's nothing wrong with it. On the other hand, if you're, like, doing this in multiple instances with the, like, if we notice that, like, you're trying to manipulate search rankings, search results, then it could affect your site. So in conclusion, what you're planning to do, it won't hurt your rankings. On the other hand, if you are planning to do this with the aim of, like, manipulating search results and, like, selling links and stuff, then like, Google can take some manual actions on you. So just I think if you go through the Webmaster guidelines on links, that should explain most of this thing.
So Ashish Sayed, this is site-wide. What I know is, right, or any particular page.
It depends. Like, so if we notice you're selling links, sometimes most of the times it's site-wide. But for if you're receiving links, then it will not necessarily be site-wide.
Okay.
If you're selling links, then it's sort of like, like, even if it's just on a few pages, it's we take action on the whole site. But if you're, like, just receiving links, then because sometimes it could simply be like, someone's maliciously trying to link to you. There we can't establish if, like, if you are buying links or if there's just, like, some unscrupulous person like, messing with your website. So in that case, we try to be as granular as possible. But on the other hand, link selling is pretty straightforward. Like, if we understand that you're selling links, then it's a violation of our policies. And
so it means that manual action might be taken if only a partial pages of website are selling links, but Penguin and Panda are the algorithm that takes site-wide action. But manual action might be taken if you are from one page or two pages selling links.
sorry, what? I didn't get you.
I just want to say that manual action might be taken if some parts of the pages are violating the guidelines. But these algorithms like Penguin filter website when the entire website has spammy backlink profile.
No. Algorithms again try to be granular as possible. I'm just talking for link selling in manual for manual actions on link selling, because we understand that the webmaster is selling links. It's a site level penalty. On the other hand, for like, if you're receiving backlinks from a manual action standpoint, like, they try to be as granular as possible, because we do not know if you're buying links or if it's just like, some unscrupulous person like, trying to like, do negative SEO on your website. So if we can establish that, like, you're actually part of a huge link network and you're buying links, then we could actually take action on the whole site. So again, it depends on what behavior we notice, and if you're violating guidelines on a large scale or something like that. So on the other hand, for algorithms, though, they again, like, try to be granular. It's not a
So Neeraj, in principle, basically, we try to be granular as much as possible, right? If we can be granular, then we will be granular, because we need your content, right? Because you know, search is nothing but it is just a reflection of the web, right? So we need content definitely to show to the users. So we just don't take manual action on sites just like that, or you know, um, um, push down content, the entire websites, just because parts of their that website are violating some of our guidelines. We try to be granular everywhere as much as possible, but in some cases it is not possible for us to be granular. In those cases, we will have to take site-wide manual actions. And whenever you have a manual action, most probably you will receive a search console notification, and in that there will be details like as to if it is granular or what part of your site is affected and things like that.
Okay, Sayed, got it.
I have a question from Abhishek Jain. I'm working on a website. If I searched with the domain name on Google itself, it's showing on the 5th page, but what should I do to place it on the first page if anyone searched for domain? I mean, it depends, right? So if your domain name is very, very unique to yourself, ideally it should show up first. So if it's like your name and there's no one else with your name, or like, and if your site has like decent content, and it should show up in the first page, unless like, you know, if you have better pages on Facebook or something like that. But if your site has something like, I don't know, buyshoes.com or something like that, then you need not necessarily, I mean, then that doesn't, that actually, that can lead to a lot of other good content better than your website. It depends. So this question ideally boils down to how can I improve my ranking, I guess. So like we have a ton of resources on optimizing your website. Like just go through all of them, and if you have any specific questions, like please reach back to us. Another question from Kamal. Fetches bot in Google Search Console renders the content properly, and okay, so this is the follow-up question. Fetches bot is in Google Search Console renders the content properly and shows same content in both user and Google View. If we disable JavaScript in browser, then also it does not render properly. Google Cache and page with disabled JavaScript shows the same copy. Sorry, if you're, I'm not understanding.
So, Kamal, what I would recommend is if you have like specific issues like this with some of your pages, where you have rendering issues and stuff like that, the best thing you can do is post them in our Google Webmaster forums, so that somebody can actually take a look at the page, you know, and then debug. Because by just explaining like this, we may not be able to.
So the thing is, sometimes with like we are able to render most JavaScript files now, but sometimes like if like there's some obfuscated content in the JavaScript or something like that, we may not be able to do it properly. So like if you post it in the forums, it'd be better because we can actually debug what's the issue there. Just next question is from Neeraj. While revamping the website, what are the factors that affect website ranking? I mean, in meta content or page layout?
Within the meta content and page layout, meta content, make sure, I mean, if it is like the same content, move to different URLs, then I think it is important for you to keep the titles and the descriptions relevant to the content that you have. And otherwise, make sure for the pages that you want to crawl the index, make sure the meta robots tag, if you're using that tag, it is used appropriately. And page layout, I think what is important in principle is basically that Google is able to crawl all sections of your page and make sure that you're not blocking any of the resources like JavaScript and CSS on your new domain, for example. So these are the couple of things. If those things are good, specifically talking about meta tags and page layout, I think there is not many things to worry about.
Okay, next question is from Minashe. We added hashtag to tab content, but Google still won't rank the tab content. How to fix that? So do you mean we can't crawl the tab content, or we can't? We are just not ranking the tab content?
You just don't see it. So when I search text query, I don't see the pages at all.
So by tab content, you mean you have a hash added to your HTML pages, right? And that points to a section on that HTML page.
No, to a section that hidden by CSS on load. And after you click on the side menu, you will see the content itself.
Mm-hmm. And is this being, are you using Ajax and stuff to load this content?
No, it's not Ajax based, but it's I think it's JavaScript. I add a link to there so you can check it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the side menu over there.
Yeah, so it's basically like videos is tab 3 and logistics is tab 4.
Okay, so we don't basically index URLs like this because this is basically a single resource, and then you have subsections on that page, and you have pointers to that page. Basically, this is like bookmarks on the same page, right? So we don't index pages with tabbed content like this. So what you will see is the main URL in Google's index, basically.
Okay, so how can I help Google to find the same tab? Maybe I need to add a hashbang to there, or maybe to change it to a full URL with slash.
Actually, I just checked and we are able to see this content. It's just that all of this content is under the original page, like basically relocation. So what you can do is just quickly site search for this particular page, and if you check for the cache for this relocation, you can actually see that we have we do index the logistics and that content also. I can actually see that we indexed it.
Okay, so basically the content itself is found on Google, but when you take a text, it's something like 10 results, a sentence, not a word. So looks like Google understands that the content is on the page, but he won't rank it because it's hidden on load. So I'm wondering how to fix it.
So what you basically mean is Google should list sections of your page, URLs that points to specific sections of your pages, right?
Yeah, so maybe I need to change something. Maybe I need to change the hash to hashbang to add subfolders. Maybe to change it from the technical side of the website itself.
Yeah, so as I see, I mean, if you have significant amount of content under these sections that you can divide into separate pages, then you can definitely do that. But if it is just navigation menu and stuff like that, then I don't think you should be worrying about that at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I can see all the content. So like from an indexing standpoint, it looks fine. So for ranking, I guess you can just test out various stuff to see how well, if you think it's better placed in different under different URLs, that you can just test things out for yourself to see which way is ranking better. Because sometimes having all content on one page and then just for the specific tabs on different pages, talking about that in detail in different pages and just having like a brief introduction in one page. So it basically means you have like 2-3 pages talking about storage, but like you have different content. That basically tells Google that like you have a lot of content talking about storage, and while ranking it could be beneficial. So because you're targeting multiple pages for just around certain storage mechanisms. So Google understands that like it could increase like traffic to your website based on like many people can share this content on social media and different links, right? So ideally, like it's fine if you want to target like have 2-3 pages across your website on just like that particular tab that you have on the homepage. If you have more content around that, it could be beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Another question from Avinash.
Few days before, I just do 301 redirect to renamed landing pages and all URL redirected towards index page. Okay. But as a result of this, only my index page showing in sub instead of landing page URL. Now I want to undo 301 to be beneficial to my website. To undo 301, I retain all this URL. So as I understand, what you're trying to say is you did a 301. So basically, your inner pages, I mean deeper pages, you had new URLs for those pages. And then all the old URLs you redirected to your home page. Is that correct? Avinash, are you here?
Yeah, he's standing.
Okay, great. Yeah. So you redirected all the old URLs to your home page, and now you see only your home page ranking, not the other URLs. So first of all, if you have, if you're changing the URLs, meaning you're migrating your content to new URLs, then what you should be doing is you should redirect the old URL to the new URL using a 301, which would basically mean the content is the same, but it has moved to a new address, right? So that will tell Googlebot that, okay, this content can now be found on these URLs, and Google will index them accordingly and start ranking them. So that was definitely a mistake to redirect all the deeper links to the home page. That is definitely not redirected. And of course, it makes sense for you to fix that problem. What you can now do is, it is not necessary for you to go back to your old URLs. You can still use your new URLs. However, make sure that you redirect your old URLs to the corresponding new URLs instead of redirecting them to the home page. Does it make sense? Great.
Just take the next question. So sorry guys, like we have only 10 minutes, so we have a bunch of questions. We'll try and take like different questions from different people. So like if you have live questions, please ask them. But we may not go through all the other questions. So if you can just post them on the community, maybe we'll get back to you, or like someone else can answer those questions. So Ram has a question. Webmasters show language error. Please suggest correct tag. My website's related to real estate category and target country is India. What is the correct hreflang tag for homepage or landing page? So if you have, it depends, right? If all of your content is in English, you don't need to have hreflang tag actually if all of your content is just in English. So if it's basically just one. You're just serving for Indian users and you don't have any. You can use hreflang EN for if your content is in English India, but even that is not necessarily. Because your target country is India, your content will be served in India anyway. So, and because you just have one version, you don't really need to add hreflangs. On the other hand, if you have like say English version for Indian users and Hindi version for Indian users, then you can always you should start using hreflang tag for HI, which is Hindi. So that's the tag that you can use if your like content is in Hindi. But you said it's in English, so ideally, if it's just English, you do not need to use any hreflang tags because I'm not sure if like you're confused and used IN or something because there is no IN language. I mean, I guess Indonesian is IN, right?
I think
Okay.
so. ID is Indonesian.
Okay, ID is Indonesian. So I guess there's no IN tag, so like that's why you're probably getting an error. But if it's English, you can just leave it as EN or EN if you want to target Indian English users. Nice dance. Let's take another question from David. Does Google expect different user behavior when we compare, let's say, 500 words articles with no links from page versus 1500 word articles with many links to other pages are the same? Like article size, it depends. Like it's based on like what you want to write, so that it doesn't really matter as long as it's relevant content. When it comes to links, even we again look for like good links, like relevant quality. If there's even just say a 200 word article that has like 2-3 links, but all of them are relevant, then we don't really think it's bad or anything. Okay, I actually look at your question and you said different user behavior. So okay, that I don't know. Like I mean, you're talking about user behavior and it depends from site to site, and it also doesn't depend just on the content. It also depends on the user experience, how fast the page is loading and all that. So
yeah, David, if you could clarify on the user
Yeah.
behavior, we probably will be able to answer.
But I mean, if you're just talking about like how to provide good user experience for an article with links or whatever, like just I mean, like as long as the links are relevant and they're properly placed, it should be fine. So like if there is like if you're adding too many links and it's just the same link, like say if you're telling someone about your friend's product, which is Nike shoes, and if you have that same link like some 10 times on that article, it doesn't really make sense. Once is good enough. It doesn't really like provide that person so much ranking if you if you link from the same page 10 times. So and it also adds to a bad user experience. So just think about like if your user wouldn't feel great when he looks at so many links and all of them are the same. So like just put yourself in your user's shoes and just check see if your content is like readable and if it's like not annoying, I guess. And another question from Neeraj. How much importance does Google have in internal anchor text while ranking a website? Is it important to optimize anchor text to the most search volume keyword? Again, this is pretty much like sort of like the same as last question. So if you if you want your users to understand like if you have one page talking about product A and another page talking about product B, and use what you think is your user would be most likely to click on when he wants to go to product B, because even Google tries to like you're trying at least to emulate users as much as possible. So if you think a user would be more likely to click because he finds a certain anchor text more relevant to him after reading the first article, that makes the most sense to have to use. And also, I mean, you should obviously take like search volume for those keywords into consideration, and generally it would match with relevancy and stuff.
So Neeraj, when you're thinking about anchor texts for internal pages, one thing that is important is you describe the destination page appropriately in the anchor text. So if it is, for example, the About Us page, you say About Us or something similar that will tell users what they can expect on the coming page, right, when they click through. So that part is important. So just try to make them descriptive of what the destination page contains.
Okay. A question from Yogendra. Google refers to unique content, but when we share and like in Facebook and Google Plus the same content we share every time, then how does social signals benefit us? So social content, most of that content when shared is probably like we can't even crawl it because it's it's not public. And when there's public content, obviously if we understand that one post is and again, see, the thing is, linking doesn't really work with in terms with social sites because all links are generally no-follow. And if we see the same post being reshared like 100 times, obviously we'll consider only one post as canonical and look at the other 99 posts as duplicates. So how does it benefit you? Like if that content is relevant to your website and if it's linking to your website, then like users will link to your website, users will start like your traffic will increase and more people will talk about your website, and when there's more people talking about your website, Google will pick that up and that could be a beneficial signal to you. But like direct linking or directly because it was shared 100 times doesn't mean like you'll get 100 links or anything, because social signals we tend to like no follow that. We've got just 2 minutes, so we'll take a question from the chat box. Deepak has asked how to handle pagination for search result pages, or should we implement lazy loading? It's up to you. So if you want to add pagination, you can always use rel prev and rel next, so that Google understands all. Like say if you have 4 pages and about the same article, if you use the rel tags, correct rel tags, we'll understand that all of that is one article and we'll index it properly. But it should also depend on what you want your user to see, because like you obviously shouldn't consider Google first. You should consider what your users are seeing, and if you think it's okay for them to it's not a big deal for them to click through page and page just to read the same article, then it's fine. But it depends on what you want your users to see. But from our perspective, as long as you provide the rel tags, we'll index it properly. Another question from Deepak. Recently, I saw many e-commerce portals are doing guest blogging. Is this a good approach to get ranking and links? Again, so if you're sort of if you're a respected authority on a particular product, and if you're writing a review on an e-commerce portal about that product, and you're just linking back to your site, that's fine. So it's basically like telling them, giving them information and telling them, okay, this is my site. If you want to read more about me or other things I talk about, come back to my site. On the other hand, if you're using that blog, guest blogs to actively manipulate rankings. So when I mean manipulate rankings, so you're basically you're linking to some 2-3 products with optimized anchor text. It's very obvious to us that you're trying to manipulate links. So in that case, I wouldn't say that's a good approach, and it violates the guidelines. So it depends on what your intent is, and it's hard to gauge intent. But in general, if a behavior is widespread and we see that it's happening a lot, then it's pretty easy for us to identify that okay, this behavior is violating our guidelines and we need to take action on it. Okay, so we have one last question. How does Google evaluate popularity of a brand or a website? So I think in general, rather than popularity, if you look at it in terms of authority, so if there is a website, a dentist talking about multiple procedures, dental procedures and stuff, and a lot of people a lot of reputed fellow dentists are linking back to them, and there's good discussion, and if we feel that this content has good authority, then we may rank that page over something say we may rank a particular article that's got good information over a WebMD page or something like that. So it depends on I think we try to take authority into we try to consider authority based on how many the reputation that site's got, it also depends on links, on the overall content on that page, and then like if it's a niche website and it's talking about it's a niche website and it's talking about like one particular product or something like that, and if a lot of people find that content good, then in that case we might consider that site as a popular site or a site with good authority. So again, this is very like it differs from case to case. So I think like generally people should try to become an authority on their product or niche or whatever, and it doesn't come immediately. It'll probably take time to build that. So yeah.
Does mentions or citations relevant too?
Sorry?
Does mentions of my brand or citations over the internet are relevant too?
Yeah, definitely. Like if people are talking about your content and people are like mentioning it in multiple sites, they're talking about your content. Obviously, that adds to the how Google thinks about your website, because we try to pick signals like links is obviously links has been important from quite some time. So if people are like mentioning your website and linking to your website, that definitely adds to your authority.
So one important point to remember is usually it is not the authority of a website, but rather the content in the pages, individual pages of that website. And we're ranking these pages, we consider like more than 200 plus segments. So there are a bunch of things that we look at to determine if that particular piece of content from your website is relevant to a user who is doing the query in that point in time, from that place, and things like that. So there are a lot of factors that are considered, and these factors are very, very dynamic, so it may change from user to user, for example. For a user, one of your pages may be very, very relevant. For another user, for a similar query, that your page may not be very relevant. So this is very dynamic in nature, and there is no fixed way to determine popularity of the entire website, for example. Right? So it automatically happens at the time when a user puts in a query. Then Google's engine basically looks at a lot of things, including your content and the context of that query, and if your content will be relevant to that person, that individual, and that sort of pages about it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys, we've run out of time. Bit over. So if you have if your questions are not answered, please post them in the community, and like either us or someone else in the community will answer that. Thanks, guys. So we'll have another Hindi hangout in a couple of weeks, and another English and Hindi hangout at the end of June, I guess. So please join us and ask questions. But if you have immediate questions, like please use the board.
Okay, thanks for
See you
joining.
guys.
Have a good day. Bye.